If not, I'll hang around if you want to get out in the hallway or something, have questions. My name is Anton Krucke. I'm the Director of the Department of Community Services and sit in the cabinet at the City and County of Honolulu. So as a funder and a person who works in this field, we do a lot of things in community services. So we do all the human services activities for the city and county. So not only do we work with homeless, but we also have the Elderly Affairs Division. We have our Work Hawaii Division, which does direct outreach, work programs, training programs. We have our Grants and Aid Office, which does all the grants and aids for the city. We have our Community-Based Development Group that does all the HUD funding, whether it be service programs, a lot that you receive, or the projects where we buy things with CDBG and those kind of things. We also have the Public Housing Authority for the city and county, and we also work in child care. So there's just a broad range of activities. But today I'm going to talk about our strategies for homelessness and the concept of beds of many flavors. So go ahead. So really, as complex as homelessness is, it really is a strategy that boils down to two things that we do. And it's important to understand that because I think you fit in this strategy all the time because we're up at a level where we're trying to execute at a broad level. So how do we do that and how do we have a strategy that creates initiatives that really do activities that may have not been there before or support activities that really work well? So as I said, as complex as homelessness is, it really boils down to two things. One is we do everything on the left that we can, creative ideas to get somebody to be willing to engage with them, right? And it could be how we approach with HPD, it could be how we do shelters, it could be how we do diversion programs, it could be our alternate approach with CORE, it could be how a shelter is run or how a program is run that would motivate somebody to make a decision. Sometimes their decision is the quality of where you're sending them, where you're asking them. It could be how you ask them. It also could just be their moment in time, right? And you want to have creative approaches so when that aha moment comes, we can engage them and get you guys working and busy on the things that would really help them in their journey. And then the second part of the strategy is we constantly analyze the resources to service those decisions. You know, whether it be sheltering, whether it be villages, whether it be permanent housing, you know, whatever it is that we do. But one of the things that we found, and you know, I wasn't, just as you know, I wasn't in government before this. I used to be the general manager for IBM for the Pacific. I ran a biotech company, and the mayor asked me to come and help him with these human services challenges. So one of the things that we do in business a lot is market segmentation. And so you have to look at your market in different ways. I know when I came, everybody told me housing is the answer. And that was the message, right? Housing is the answer. Well, housing is the answer for some. Housing's not the answer for all, right? And so, you know, as you segment your market, you can segment them in a lot of ways. A great example of segmentation was when we took the Oahu Housing Now program, and then we morphed it into our emergency housing vouchers, but we went out as a segment of the homeless market that wanted to be housed. Not the ones that scored high on the scale that were our chronic homeless, but people that wanted to be housed. A lot of those were families, right? And out of that program, you housed over 300 families and over 850 individuals. Boom. That's what market segmentation does. It allows you to address a market, well, the market wants to be addressed. Like in private sector, you sell products that people want to buy, right? And so that's what you're trying to do with market segmentation. So not only do you have demographics like that, but the concept of housing everybody as not the full answer is really important because as you look at the array of individuals that are homeless, some of them really, we have no objective to house them, right? They have medical issues, right? And it could be, you know, everybody talks about drug addiction and you know, the mental illness, but I mean, they just have medical issues. You know, cancer, diabetes, medical issues. And so can we develop beds that can address that segment? We're not even looking to house them. Right? We have respites when they go through 30 people and they say within a year, 5 of these people are going to pass away. Well, how do we make that year really good? Successful bedding is what we're looking for. And so to do that, when you're doing demographics, you're doing market segmentation, what you're really looking to do is beds of many flavors. So I want you to keep in mind a number. In the point in time count that was done, there was 1,728 shelter beds in the system. That's what we're dealing with, right? A little over 4,000 homeless, more or less half are sheltered, half are on the street. So those are sort of the dynamics of what we're dealing with. The numbers vary depending them, look at them, or whatever. Keep those numbers in mind as I show you what we've tried to do with that strategy and beds of many flavors since the point in time count. Next chart. Okay, so housing, beds of many flavors. Next. So what do? I'm going to take you through what we've done since the point in time count and give you a sense of how many bed touches that we can do with the strategy that you'll be involved in. HONU, as you know, is a triage and shelter. It moves around every 3 or 4 months to a different portion of the island, has 40 beds, can be adults, can be families, right? But within that, 58% of the people that come to HONU get placed. They get placed in a shelter, they get placed in permanent housing, they get placed in medical treatment. We send them back to their families, right? Or we may find that they need to go back to the mainland, right? With a receiver on the other end. But anyway, in that, currently it's at the Boosby lot out in Kapolei, 58% placement rate, 65 people a month come through there, that's 750. All right, next chart. So we also have, with CDBG money, last December we awarded IHS this detox center. Only 8 beds. Oh gosh, this is tough work, detox, right? But in those 8 beds in the 1 year, 230 have been served. And when you touch a bed, if you can make that touch be successful so the next touch is more successful, that's what you're trying to do, right? So let's look at this. All right. So if you'll notice, these are in green. That means we've activated them. They're active and they're current. All right, next chart. We bought a property up in Kaha with affordable housing funds. There's 8 units out there. There's 60 beds. West Oahu runs it. Great center for people with different issues. Activated that property. We're getting pretty good, right? Remember, 1,728 shelter beds previously. Go ahead. Maui Behavioral Medical Respite. So when we had CORE, which is our alternate response, we were trying out things like medical respites. We had one at age 4, right? But as I said, when you do market segmentation, some of your goals aren't to really house people. It's you need to get them off the street into medical treatment and have the time to relax. So it's not like going to the ER, being there for 5 hours and going back to the street. Go there. Be there for 3 months. Be there for 4 months. Get yourself together, and while you're there, we can work on all the other things you guys work on, right? The IDs and where you want to go, what's good. We find out a lot about these individuals, what works for them. Again, successful bedding, right? Medical respite. Next chart. Okay, so we had a center that we had built, that had been built already in Ibalai, and it was called the Ibalai Resource Center. It was really a complex project because it had been built with different sources of funds. These are the kind of problems governments have, right? And we were obligated to those sources of funds. But within that, we were able to put together a deal, partnership with the state, right? Where they're going to run it, their adult mental health group is going to run this. They're going to do mental health treatment on the first floor in the mezzanine. Some of it will be voluntary mental health treatment. Some will be involuntary, where somebody, they're in danger to themselves or someone else. They can have the room, but they can stay there a while. And then we also gave them 27 rooms for affordable housing up in the unit, maybe graduating not from the downstairs, but graduating from their other programs that they have. But this was a great situation where we could provide the facilities and the state runs a program, we get more housing.
That was a good one.
So, on this side where I say the strategy deployment, and I talk about partnership, we're at a time right now, and part of why we can make these charts can happen all in 1 year is because we're at a time of partnership with the state that we've never been at before. Right? The governor and the mayor, they're attacking the issues together. And this is one area that they really want to address. And so while they're doing it together, a lot of these programs are trying to leverage our strengths where we in the city can provide a set of resources, right, like a building and such, and they can help us with the services to run those programs, which allows us to activate these beds. Next chart. Waikiki Vista, $38 million, one of the city's largest purchases. And in Waikiki Vista, we really looked at it in a different way. One is we found a home for the Royal Hawaiian Band, which is great, right? And if you ever go by there, you should go by their offices. It's like a museum, right? And it really is the history of what we have, and I think everyone's proud of the band. But also, it's affordable housing for transit-oriented development. We have a lot of floors there. It used to be Tokai University, if you know that building, right? But we did something unique there. So with the state helping fund us, we had a program, I don't know if you remember, but it was a family assessment center in Kakako, and it was in a big maintenance building, and we lost that. We couldn't keep doing that. And I remember that happened right when I started in my job with the city, and I said, I remember that program being so successful, I don't want to lose it, right? So what did we do? We did something unique there, is we took one floor, and we gave that as a family shelter. Catholic Charities is running this, right? They run it as a family shelter, but then we gave them the 3 floors above it for supportive housing. So very rarely does a shelter have their supportive housing where they can send their people to directly and control it. You know, we're kind of getting the message that the flow is important. And then while they're in supportive housing, then they can work on the next step, which is permanent housing, right? And so we did Waikiki Vista, big buy, a lot of beds. Next chart. Getting up there. Next chart. Okay, we also, with the rail coming through, the city is buying properties that the rail will be on. One of the properties we bought in Ala was the First Hawaiian Bank building. And we decided that one respite that I talked about wasn't enough, so we opened another one. So in partnership with the state, where they're helping fund it, we have a medical facility inside what was the old bank building. But then in the parking lot, we put the tiny homes that the state's really proud of for individual usage. So you have people recovering inside, and then in the parking lot outside living, really adding more beds for new segmentations. Next chart. Looking pretty dramatic, right? Next chart. Waiwa, very proud of this. We bought this building with CDBG money, right? And so we're able to take a building like this, and then we can offer it to a service provider, in this case Family Promise, to run it as a family shelter. And I think that the significance of this is one of the things that the DCS, Department of Community Services, does is we recognize a service provider's contribution to the community as social capital. So rather than they have to pay us a large lease, right, we charge them almost nothing to lease it because they're paying us in social capital to the community. And that's how we analyze the relationship with them. They'll open up the center. It'll be really excellent for families. And it's important because if you remember, I said Waikiki Vista was a family shelter. This is a family shelter. And a lot of that is when you do market segmentation again, getting back to analyzing your market, right? With all the kauhales that the state is putting in with congregate bathrooms, those are for singles. You can't have families in those kind of setups, right? And so if you can't have families in those kind of setups, we wanted to get ahead of that and create family shelters so we could help manage our population that we're working with. Okay, so Waiwa opens later this month. They're moving people in. They're getting ready right now, and they're moving people in, activated. Next chart. So look, I talked to you about 1,728 current shelter beds. These are our bed touches just since January. Okay? So if I was selling you pots and pans, which I'm not, if I was selling you new knives, at this point in the info commercial, I'd say, wait, there's more. Right? And so wait, there's more. Next chart. Next chart. Sorry. Okay, so we have a set of buildings in Hauula. We awarded this to the state, again in partnership, and we're going to make that a family shelter. And Hauula being kind of a community like it is, we're going to do more than just a family shelter. We're going to work with the local faith-based organizations. We're going to do some work development out there. We'll bring our Work Hawaii division, our Elderly Affairs division, and we'll really make it a community processing of different issues that they have, working with the community association there, right, and really helping that community come along. We've awarded it to the state. They've awarded a service provider. They're getting the property ready now, so that's yet to come. It'll be here in a few months. Next slide. So these next ones are in gold. Green is activated. That means it's running now. Next chart. Ohana Navigation Center, Family Promise again in Mo'iliili. Right? They've got another family shelter coming up, and so we're getting broad participation in this market segmentation that we're trying to address. So you see single units, you see family units, you see medical units, right? We have more to come. Evil Center. This is another property that the city acquired in anticipation of rail coming through. It's a big warehouse in Evil, right? We have a lot of different resources in Evil in that area. I think we have 7 different shelters and groups there. You know, the rest stop, H4, IHS, men's shelter, women's shelter, you know, Sand Island Treatment Center, quite a few things going on there. But we're going to build 4 25-bed shelters inside that building. And I want to tell you one that I'm really proud of. We're going to do one experiment with IHS where within the warehouse, there'll be individual units that are designed by an architect and a neuroscientist to help somebody peel away the layers of trauma that they've experienced while they've been homeless. So that particular shelter, they'll go through a 12-week program, right, where they kind of take the layers off. Because if you try to address trauma in a way that's all at once, it's very difficult, right? You suppress it. So the concept here with the scientists is we can peel them away one at a time. So let's give it a try. These units, we can break them down, we can build them quick. If this works well, we'll do more of them, right? And looking for, again, creative ways to get somebody to be willing to engage the system. So somebody might be on the street and they say, I heard about that shelter, I want to go to that shelter. Mm-hmm. We got them, we can engage them, we can work with them, you can work with them, right? So Evil Center, that'll be 400. And so you got the state is really active now in building Valhalles, right? These are the single units they've put up. Next chart. So these 3, they already have active at Middle Street, Coneohe, Cedar Farms, Evil A's to come. They've got a big group there. I have a NOFA out right now that we're about to release a reward for about $11 million for a couple of villages, right, that we're going to build. And we've got a CBDG that we're about to award that will also activate some more properties. But really, if you get the message that we're trying to do, and as many creative things that we can do to get somebody to be willing to engage the system, constantly analyzing our resources to service those decisions, market segmentation, getting people into a system where you guys can do your magic. Okay. That's beds of many flavors.
He said bed.
So really quickly, we're not doing bad on time. So really, we'll do questions. Really quickly, I want to show you something else that we're doing. So a lot of people want to use data to make decisions, right? And I clearly do. I used to be in IBM. You know, with biotech, we looked at numbers all the time, right? And so we want, this isn't like data to just gather data, but it's decision-oriented data, right? And so what we're going to develop at the city is a homeless command center. Now, this isn't a database where we keep all records of everything. It's a way for us to ping your different data sources, right? So we can bring up information, so we can look at it and make decisions, much like you do in a traffic command center, those kind of things. We know how to handle the privacy of data because we do all the state IDs, we do all the driver's licenses, we do medical records. We also have a system that understands everything in the city that's physical. So we know where every pipe is, we know where every sidewalk is, we know where the BT stations are, right? It even tracks the planes overhead. And we can look at the infrastructure that we have, right? And we can not only look at it today, we can look at it yesterday, the day before. And so we can ping your data and we can place it against these things, right? So we can look at it and make decisions. So my view of this thing is we're gonna build a building, we're gonna buy a building, and in the first half of next year we're gonna move in, and in this building will be the command center. And the command center will be able to bring up this data that we want, be able to look at it and make decisions about it, right? And at the same time, I'll build a room in the middle, right, where we can meet. So if your team wants to have a meeting in there, they can meet in the command center. They can look at the data. They can work directly with the city. If you need somebody else there, you need the state there, we'll bring the state in. But it'll really be an open place with open information so that we can all work together, right? And so that's what we're looking to do with the Homeless Command Center. It can really make a difference as we can ping places of data. And we'll be coming around and saying, do you want to open up so we can do that? And you may say, well, I don't want to enter any more data. We're not going to ask you to enter data. In fact, what we may do is give you a tablet so you can help run your shelter better, help run your organization better. And while you're running it, we'll be able to ping it off, right? But we're not going to store it. We're not going to keep it, right? But we're going to look at it so that we can all make decisions, right? And that's what we're trying to do with the Homeless Command Center.
And I think it'll help us make a difference, right? So if we were looking at a place where there was an encampment of 20 individuals, families, individuals, rather than say, let's just move them out of the park, why don't we look at what we have, understand our demographics of what we have, and let's plan. I think we need 4 vouchers. We need some hospital beds, right? We need a couple of these things. And when we get those together, that's when we send you together with us to go say, look, we can't live here anymore. This is a public space. Our public wants a space. So you can't live here anymore, but we have something for you. And here's what we have for you. And we've got to move. And by the way, when we move, we're not coming back. That's sort of how the city is trying to come at this thing. It's not easy, but we're trying to do it in a way where we can be really effective. So next chart. So we're grabbing all the information that we have about what you need out there. This is forging these ideas as we come together on a command center. Next chart. Then we start to say, where are we going? Our first steps with the command center are going to be like hotel management. What beds are available? Where can we take people? What are the criteria for those beds? And so we can make decisions saying, there's an opening here. There's not an opening here. Because we have a very active group. I mean, with the HMIS and that database, which we'll ping off of, right? Those are mostly the HUD-supported programs. The service providers are getting ESG grants and everything. The city's becoming much more direct funding. The state is becoming more direct funding. So we have groups out there that will be addressing people that aren't part of that system. And when those groups want to address people, like CORE wants to, they need to know what's available out there. And our HPD needs to know what's available out there. And how do we provide the transportation? So the first step will be hotel management. How do we maximize our beds? I just talked to a gentleman yesterday, and he's telling me we got a great facility. They have 30 beds for certain criteria for people. And I go, gosh, is it full? He goes, no, only 15 are being used. That's got to come up on your chart, right? If somebody doesn't know you have 15 open beds, it doesn't do us any good, right? It's got to come up on the chart. And so we'll move down the food chain, if you will. We'll match people to beds, right? We'll try to do the best we can with them while we're there. We'll try to learn as much about we can, right? And then as other questions come up, what are your requirements? We'll start to say, well, we don't have that information. Let's go figure out that and let's bring up that information, right? We'll work closely with the hospitals because they're providing a lot of beds for homeless and treatment for homeless, right? So we'll engage their command center as well. So that's what we're trying to do with this system. It's not a data repository system. It's a command center, and that's why we call it that. Next chart. So but we do all this stuff. We've got a data architect in the city that knows how to do these things. We have the city system, the Lokai system that I told you about that has all the infrastructure knowledge is already built. We have a hotel reservation system that's already built, right? And so we're going to be deploying this thing quicker than I would have ever deployed a master program like this when I was in IBM. The speed of it will be actually, it's like daunting to me already. So I'm really looking forward to being able to do this. Next chart. Right? And so we've got the high-level design. It's done. We're going to take our first system, HONU, and we're going to turn it live as soon as we can get it live. And then HPU and CORE will be able to use it. You'll be able to use it. I heard a rumor that said HONU only takes people from HPD. That's not true. Right? It takes walk-ins and all. We reserve beds for HPD. We reserve beds for CORE. But we take folks from other issues that come in. And at a 58% rate, we place them. So that's the first one that's going to come up. So anyway, I really appreciate your attention on this. It kind of gives you an insight into how a public sector government takes a situation and addresses it with both its strategy, and then as you can see, the actions fall into the strategy. And hopefully you see where you fall into the strategy, because without you, none of this can happen. So anyway, thank you very much.
All right, we got some questions from the app we're going to do since we got about 10-ish minutes left. How can we support the building and growth of a variety of housing options for the most vulnerable under these market conditions?
Well, I'm not sure if the question's about you see a house and you have an idea about how you can do it, or there's a gap. You see a population, but you don't see a treatment, right? So if you have those kind of any of those situations, call us at DCS and we'll see what we have. Maybe there's a match already. Maybe there's not. Maybe there's a planning we need to do. Maybe there's a house that can be found, and the next CDBG NOFA that comes out, you apply for it, get a house, right? Because that's how people get these. Sometimes we buy the houses, we buy the properties, but other times we let you propose it to us and you just buy them and they become yours. So either way, contact us at DCS.
All right. What exactly does housing of all flavors truly look like?
Well, I don't know about housing of all flavors, but beds of many flavors, right? A little bit different. But it really, when you say what's it truly look like, it looks like treatment beds. It looks like permanent housing beds. It looks like congregate beds. It looks like family beds. It looks like beds that are what you're trying to do is the right bed for the person. I call it successful bedding. It doesn't do us any good to put somebody in a room and then they fall out, right? If we don't think through it. Successful bedding can be, rather than have somebody go to a shelter, why doesn't the whole group of 5 that are together on the street all go? Mm-hmm. So they still have their unit together, right? Mm-hmm. Why don't we engage our churches? So our churches take one of these hollies and they put them in their parking lot so a person not only has a bed, but they have a group that they can relate to. Mm-hmm. And while they're there with the church can help them get their documentation, help them do those kind of things. And then when we find a place for them to stay, they have a place to go to on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. They have people checking on them that care about them, that they have relationships with them. There's so much around what is a successful bed, right? It's not just warmth, it's not just dryness, it's a lot of things. And for each individual, we have to work on whatever those things are that supplement what they already have. Some people are strong. They don't need that much. Some people need a lot more, right? And their friends can give it to them. We can help find those connections. But again, looking for what it is for that person or that group is successful bedding.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually a great question that I also feel. How can we connect more with outreach when sweeps are being done? And what's happening to the people that are getting swept out?
That's an interesting, conversation. And so have a perspective, right? If you're government, you have a lot of people. I go to a lot of places that really want their parks back for their kids, right? They feel threatened. It's public safety, right? It may not be public safety, but it's perceived public safety, right? So you got that boiling here. And I know you got on the other side where service providers get frustrated when they tell me, well, now the person lost something, they didn't find something, I can't find them. I take some of that, I have to tell you honestly, with a grain of salt. I don't know how you lose them when they really come back because, sweeps aren't successful. That's why we don't really do them. I call them, they call them enforcements, I call them sanitation. We need to clean up. We've had people homeless that when we stop doing it, they say, how come you're not coming around to pick up the trash anymore for them? It's not as simple as sweeps are bad, you're moving people, you're not telling them, you're not doing their rights. It's not. It's got a lot of stuff going on around it, And so the more we work together, though, we can make those events more successful. So that before we do them, we're engaging with you. Our community policing teams are very effective when they do that. When they don't do that, they're not as effective, right? I get it, But I think that the goal would be the more we can think about what we're going to do before we do it and prepare, then our actions will be more successful. The less we do it, they'll be less successful.
We'll do this last one from the Hoover, and then we still have some time so we can just do general questions from people in the room. But what about housing for a client that has disability, but they are not elderly? There's not much placement for them.
No.
I understand that there's not enough housing of all kinds. So once I do one place, you can tell me, well, what about this person that doesn't have this place? No matter how much we do, if I double that chart, when the music stops, there's not enough beds.
Mm-hmm.
It's that's the situation. But we're going to try to do some things a little bit differently. We've never on Oahu given out project-based vouchers. And I'm trying to do it where the developers would use maybe the project-based vouchers for the unit that would be for disability. Not necessarily Kapuna, but could be if it's a senior housing. But if they use that because they have to put in extra money to get the unit ready for a disability, then they have a voucher with it and it makes it work out for them. But there are flavors that aren't being addressed, right? And we'll try to address them. We're learning a lot in these medical respites that we didn't know before, in terms of how many diseases there are on the street,
and those kind of things. I think you've seen big numbers where their loss of life is earlier, but it's these medical issues are very complex, and they're not close to being ready for housing. There's a segment that we really want to open up, which are care homes, right? Where really care homes don't want homeless today that much, and we're going to try to see what we can do with that landscape to make it a little more inviting, right? So the answer is yes, there are, but we can keep trying. You can point them out to us. That's part of how you do market segmentation. The customers and the people in the market tell you, right? And that's what we need.
And then for this last little bit, since we're out of Hoover questions, if anybody has any questions in the room at all, questions?
I'll do the money. Any plans to involve Hawaii public housing?
Section 8. Yeah, so public housing, we don't really do public housing. We do Section 8 vouchers, which are housing choice vouchers. So, the challenge there is we'll open up the waiting list, and what happens is everybody apply to the waiting list. They may or may not qualify, but they apply. And we take all those applications and we do a randomization of them, right? And then there's a list. And we go down the list, and we can get to about 50 people a month in inspecting them, right? And then we inspect them, and if they qualify, and then they are ready, we give them a voucher. But they have to find a place. So we don't, it's not public housing where we build something and that's how we do it. It's housing choice vouchers. Now, there's other vouchers out there, like, sometimes HUD came up with the emergency housing vouchers. We have housing first vouchers. We have rent-to-work programs. So, different ways to get people into permanent housing who want to. I'll tell you an interesting thing that I found out that I didn't know, though. In the Section 8 program, when we issue those, half of the people that utilize their vouchers utilize them by staying in place. So they were stressed. They were probably potentially becoming homeless. They get their voucher and it allows them to stay in place, right? So 50% are being used to get people housed, but 50% are being used to keep people housed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, but we don't. The state has some public housing projects, but we do the housing choice vouchers in that manner that we do.
I heard you talk about a lot of the collaboration between county and state. Is there similar collaboration happening between counties?
The question was collaboration between counties, only in terms of sharing ideas. We're not doing like financial transactions across the board, but the state kind of oversees all the continuum of cares. So, PIC's at the table, but, the Big Island's there, Maui's there. And so we're in those meetings, and we share ideas and share what we're doing. I think a good example would be, well, you heard a great presentation yesterday if you're here on the working with the faith-based organizations and getting some land and building a village. You'll see some things like that from us. That's coming. It just hasn't been announced yet. And so, we get different ideas from each other, but the counties don't have any financial transactions going back and forth. But we do have financial transactions going back and forth to the state.
I'm hearing a lot about collaboration and all this stuff, and we are working with populations that experience homelessness and all that kind of stuff. Would other things like HPD also be involved in this collaboration?
Once a week, the mayor convenes a group of people, right? And it's a homeless meeting. And so, I'm updating that group on beds. CORE is there. They're updating people on where should we go to address certain situations. What are we looking at? At that table, not only are my team and CORE, but HPD's at that table. So they're all part of that. And in some places, frankly, we do it better than other places. Corporal Pagan up in Kapolei, he does a great job of bringing people together prior to enforcement. Other places use the pre-engagement with their community policing teams, and other places don't, right? And so you get different things all over. But they're at the table, so we can do the best we can to coordinate our activities. But I'll tell you, just so you know where I come from, I happen to be a supporter of HPD. I think it's important for our community that we have law and order and those kind of things. I think that where we touch some of these situations is difficult. And so we have to do all we can to do the best we can where we touch situations that, you could, it's like a debate. I could pick a card and argue it one way. I could pick a card and argue it the other way. And the only way you can bridge those two cards are with communication with each other. So yes, they're at the meeting. Every week we meet. And we review what we're doing. We get ideas from people. People come in. The state comes to those meetings, right? And we work on it. Sometimes we work on it better than other times, but when we get it right, it's really good. And when we get it wrong, it was like what we did yesterday, and we can't keep repeating it. But that does happen. I don't want to say it doesn't happen.
Can I, really quick? Is there a representation, the mayor's meeting, is there representation from the continuum? And is there a lived experience representative? Or is the mayor looking at possibly incorporating that into these meetings?
So at these meetings, we have Laura Thielen comes from Continuum of Care, and also Connie Mitchell's there from IHS. So we have that input there. We don't have lived experience input at this time. Doesn't mean that we can't have that. I will tell you that when we developed CORE, right, that was sort of one of the things I did when we first started. I brought together a planning committee before we started. And so at the planning committee, we had members of HPD there, we had the fire department, I had the emergency services, all the city departments. But I also had the state there, the state homeless office and such. So we had a state folks at a city table designing a city program, right? And then I also had service providers there. I had some business folks there, and I had 2 shared experiences persons there, right? So we could talk to those individuals and say, tell us what it looks like when somebody walks up to you. I know what it looks like when I walk up to you. You tell me what it looks like when somebody walks up to you. And that was eye-opening for some. Others got it. They already knew it. So, a mixture of that. So we did that in CORE. We aren't doing lived experience in our weekly meetings with the mayor, but we do have service provider representation there, yes.
One more question. Last question.
He says one more question. I don't know.
As an outreach worker with the sweeps that go through, it is sad that we do end up not finding our clientele for a while. It's not that we don't end up finding them eventually, because they do end up coming back after the sweep for a period of time. But is there a way where we as outreach workers are able to be let to know when you guys are about to do sweeps, so that we can go into those different regions and tell our clientele that, hey, there's about to be a sweep through here and you're going to have to move, and so that we can keep in contact with them?
Okay, first off, we don't do sweeps. Okay, but yes, to your question, Reyes is great, by the way. That's what the community center is about. So once we start to get data, and if we know we're going there, right, and folks are there, what's the most we can tell? How many caseworkers do we know? And let's contact them and ask them what they think, what's needed. Not just we're doing this so you're prepared, but if we were to give you something, what would you want the most that would make a difference? You have too many cases. I know it's easy. You walk up to somebody, they say, I don't want resources. You walk away because you can check off that you saw them. That's not helping us either, right? We tried a program in Wahiwa and Waipahu where we gave money to a service provider so they would have like 5 people with 1 caseworker, right? Here's money to do that. By the way, it was working, but the service provider went under. So Chief Zero went under. So, but I think that's part of our issue too, is you have too many clients. But yes, to your question, that's one of the things that we can do in the command center. When you get information, you can then communicate, and then you can take the next step. So.
You can take it away.
All right, everybody, give a round of applause. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out and rocking with us. Thank you so much, everyone, for being presenting today. Now, remember, as we're leaving today, to remain quiet. If you do need your paper stamped, Annie's right over there. Do one of these. Do a little. Okay, she's not going to do a little dance. But just go see her, and thank you so much.